Episode 1, The First Whisper. They told me the morgue was just a room. Cold, silent, harmless. They lied. I remember my first night there. The air was heavy, soaked in the scent of disinfectant as something older like whetstone from a forgotten crypt. I held my rosary tight, each bead digging into my fingers as if I could squeeze the fear out of me. Just watch the bodies. Sister Agnes, the Mother Superior, had said, pray for them, then leave. Simple. Until the first whisper. It came when I was alone, that door locked, the candles trembling in the stale air. I was scrubbing the chest of an old man, a farmer, who had died in his sleep when his lips moved. Not open, not twitching, just moving, like a puppet without strings. And then I heard it, Agnes. I frowned. The voice was low, steady, neither male nor female. It wasn't the old man's. It wasn't mine. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, curling around the room like smoke. Who's there? My voice cracked against the stone walls. No answer, only the sound of dripping water from the pipes overhead. I wanted to run. God help me, I almost did. But then, the corpse eyes opened. Dead eyes, clouded, glassy, and impossibly aware. Write this down, the voice commanded. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the rosary. What? The corpse jaw unhinged with a faint, dry creak, and from its mouth came words. I didn't know a language older than any prayer I had ever heard. My head throbbed with each syllable, but somehow, I understood enough to obey. I grabbed the ledger and wrote. My pen carved black lines into the page until my fingers bled. When it was done, the words glowed faintly, a sickly gold, before sinking into the paper like ink into flesh. A corpse closed its mouth, its eyes shut. Silence returned. I stared at what I had written. It wasn't Latin, it wasn't human, but one phrase burned itself into me. He only speaks where the living dare not pray. From that night, I didn't fear the dead. I feared the voice that used them. And when the bells tolled midnight, I found myself waiting, because some part of me wanted to hear it again. And I did. This time, it left. Episode 2, The Corpse That Prayed. The second night, I told myself it had been a dream, a trick of exhaustion, maybe even the devil testing me. But deep down, I knew better. The morgue waited. When I pushed the heavy door open, the cold air kissed my skin like ice. The lamps flickered, and for a moment, I could swear I heard breathing, but there was no one there. Only the dead. That night, a new body had been brought in. A young man, barely 20. His face was still twisted in the fear of his final breath. I whispered a prayer for him, my voice trembling as I washed his blood-stained hands. Then his lips moved. Not a twitch, not the random spasm of death. No, they shaped words. And then I heard it, Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. I frowned. It was the voice, again calm, deep, unearthly, but this time it spoke through him. The boy's jaw shifted in small, unnatural jerks, as though invisible strings were pulling it. His dead tongue formed a prayer I hadn't heard in years, a hymn lost to the church, forbidden after the great revisions. Who are you? I whispered, clutching my rosary. Why him? The voice didn't answer. The corpse only prayed, louder, stronger, until the ceiling lamps swayed, and the drawers that held the other bodies began to rattle. I wanted to run. God forgive me. I wanted to flee, but then the young man's eyes opened wide and empty, staring at me like the pale face of a moon. Write this down, Sister Agnes, the voice commanded. My hands trembled as I reached for the ledger. I scribbled every word, but this time, as the ink touched the page, it bled upward, searing symbols into the walls themselves, glowing like molten gold. When the last word burned itself into stone, the corpse stopped, his lips sealed, his body went still, and then the voice whispered one sentence that hollowed me out from the inside. He prayed for you, Agnes. Even in death, he prayed for you. The room fell silent. I dropped my pen. My heart pounded against my ribs like a drum. But I couldn't look away from the boy's face, because now he was smiling, and I swear he hadn't been smiling before. Episode 3, The Forbidden Psalm. I didn't sleep after the second night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, dead boy's hollow smile, and I heard that voice echoing in the dark corners of my mind. By the third night, I stopped pretending I was just doing my duty. No, I was waiting for the voice. When I entered the morgue, the air was different, heavy, expectant. The crucifix above the door tilted slightly, as if even Christ himself didn't want to look inside. There were no new bodies, just the boy. The smile was gone, but his pale lips were cracked, almost ready. "Are you here?" I whispered, and then, like breath against my neck, "Tonight, I teach you the same." The lamps dimmed, the walls shivered. I clutched my rosary so tightly it cut into my palm. Then, the boy's mouth opened. From it came a sound no living throat could make. It deep, layered, like a choir buried underground. Words poured out, slow and heavy, dripping with a holiness that felt wrong. Psalm XII, the voice intoned. The Psalm of the Forgotten. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't in any scripture I'd studied. Still, I wrote. My hand moved faster than thought, carving the words into the page like a woman possessed. With every line, the morgue grew colder. The metal drawers holding the dead rattled as if they, too, wanted to join the prayer. "Oh, Lord of the silence, receive us where no angels dare tread." When I wrote the last verse, the candles blew out. Only the golden glow of the words remained, burning against the walls. And then, I heard it, 1,000 voices whispering in perfect unison, coming from the bodies, from the stone, from beneath the morgue itself. Amen. I stumbled back, my breath ragged. The boy's lips closed. His face was calm now, almost serene, but on the wall behind him, written in that sickly golden fire, one final line remained. "Sing this in the chapel, and heaven will answer." I should have run. I should have burned the ledger and begged God for forgiveness. But I didn't, because somewhere deep inside, I wanted to hear heaven answer. And that's when the bells began to ring. From below, episode 4, The Body That Smiled. I told myself I wouldn't go back. After the song burned itself into the walls, I swore I'd never step foot in that morgue again. But the bells, they wouldn't stop. Every night, at exactly midnight, they rang from beneath the chapello, hollow and patient, as if they were calling my name. On the 4th night, I surrendered. When I opened the morgue door, I saw him. The new body lay on the center table, Father Mateo, a man of faith, a man who had baptized me when I was a child. They said he died quietly in his sleep, his hands folded over his chest like a saint. But saints do not smile like this. His lips were curled unnaturally wide, exposing teeth far too clean for the dead. His eyes were sealed shut, but I could feel them watching me. "Why him?" I whispered, and then a Kamath voice. "Not all priests serve me." The words slithered around me, low and sharp, making the ear taste of iron. I stumbled closer, trembling. Father Mateo's skin was pale, waxy, but his smile, it deepened. And then, he laughed. It was faint, like the creak of an old door, but it was laughter nonetheless. "Confess, Sister Agnes," the voice murmured through his lifeless throat. "He did not die holy. He wore the collar of the devil." I shook my head. "No, I knew him. He was good." The corpse twitched. His hand rose an inch, then fell back against the table, his jaw unhinged with a slow, dreadful crack. From the gaping mouth came words soaked in venom. "Ask the children of San Marcos. Ask them what their priest did in the dark." My breath caught. My rosary slipped from my fingers. The other drawers in the morgue rattled violently. The dead were listening. "Why are you telling me this?" I cried. "Because you will write it down," the voice replied, calm and merciless. And I did. I wrote every word. Each letter burned black into the pages of my ledger. And I swear, I felt Father Mateo's smile widening with every stroke of my pen. When it was done, the voice whispered one last thing soft enough to sound almost tender. "Now, Sister Agnes, bury him facing down. The ground must not see his eyes." I obeyed, but as I left the morgue that night, I heard it faint but clear coming from behind the door. Father Mateo, still laughing. Episode 5, The Bells Below. The bells began before midnight. I was in my cell, clutching my rosary, when the sound rose from beneath the convento and heavy, as if wrung by hands buried deep in the earth. No one else heard them, not the other sisters, not even Mother Superior. But I did, and I knew where they came from. I descended the stone steps into the morgue, each footstep echoing like a warning. The door groaned as I pushed it open, and the sound hit me, louder now. The bells weren't from the chapel. They came from below the morgue floor, The corpses lay still, but the drawers trembled. And I saw it. The first coffin, an old, rusted one in the far corner, shook violently. Then another, and another. Soon, the entire room pulsed with the rhythm of the bells, as if the dead were trying to rise in time with the sound. "Stop," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Please, stop." They hear the call, the voice murmured, surrounding me like smoke. "And so do you?" "No," I gasped, backing away, but my feet carried me forward instead toward the trembling coffins. The air thickened, and I could smell earth, damp and rotten, seeping up through the cracks in the stone. One of the coffin lids shifted with a hollow scrape, and, with a sharp, splintering snap, a skeletal hand burst through the gap. I couldn't scream. The bells grew deafening now. The lamps swung wildly. Every drawer in the morgue rattled like a drum. "Help them rise, Sister Agnes," the voice urged, deep and commanding. "They cannot sing without you." And then I saw them, not with my eyes, not fully, but in the dim flicker of candlelight. I saw pale shapes pressing against the coffin lids from inside, faces stretched in silent prayer, mouths moving, though no sound came. I stumbled back, clutching my ledger to my chest. "What are they?" I whispered. "The choir," the voice answered. "The dead who still believe." One coffin cracked open, only an inch, but enough for me to see an eye milky, unblinking, staring at me. I ran. I slammed the morgue door behind me, but even then, I could still hear it. The bells, the rattling wood, and 100 dead voices, whispering one word in unison. Agnes. Episode 6, Confession of the Dead. The morgue was quieter than it had ever been. No rattling coffins, no whispering bells, just a silence so heavy it felt alive. I should have been grateful. I should have prayed. Instead, I went back down. When I opened the door, the smell of cold earth and candle wax struck me first. The bodies lay as they always did, but there was something different about the air. It felt watchful. I stood at the center of the room, clutching my ledger. When I heard it, "Bless me, sister, for I have sinned," the voice didn't come from one place. It came from all of them. One corpse's lips twitched, another's jaw shifted. Soon, everybody in the morgue began to move their mouths in unison, their teeth clicking like rosary beads dropped on stone. I backed against the wall. No, this isn't real. I lied to my wife." A woman's voice rasped from the drawer nearest to me. "I stole from the orphanage." A deep, broken voice croaked from another. "I killed a man and buried him by the river," came a third, low and trembling. The dead were confessing, all at once, their voices layered, tangled, weaving a hymn of sin. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't stop. The words weren't entering through my ears anymore. They were inside my head. And then, one voice cut through the rest, clear, sharp, measured. "Sister Agnes, your sin was the worst of all." The world tilted. My rosary slipped from my fingers and hit the stone floor with a sound that rang louder than the bells ever had. "Ye have no sin," I whispered, trembling. The voice laughed. It was soft, almost kind. "Do you not remember the prayer you spoke when you were 12? I frowned. "See, because I did. A prayer I'd buried so deep, I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. A desperate, secret plea whispered in anger the night my mother died. If you are real, take something back. I dare you." And the next morning, my father never woke up. The dead all fell silent. In that quiet, one Corsican man whose name I did not know slowly turned its head toward me, its mouth stretched open, and in my own voice, it whispered, "And he heard you." I ran from the morgue, but even on the stairs, I could hear them, not confessing anymore, praying for me. Episode 7, The Ledger of the Damned. I locked the ledger away. I swore I'd never open it again, but that didn't stop it. On the 7th night, I woke to the sound of scratching, not in the morgue, not from the dead, from inside my own cell. I turned my head and saw it, the ledger on my desk where I had left it, its pages turning by themselves, the quill moving across them in a steady, merciless hand. I didn't breathe. The ink was black, but it glimmered faintly, like oil in candlelight. Words appeared line by line, written in a language I didn't know, and yet I understood every single one. Some anxiety for the one who will not be forgiven. I stumbled out of bed, grabbed the ledger, and slammed it shut. The quill didn't stop. It wrote across the cover, "Sister Agnes." I dropped it. The air in the room turned heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I backed away until my shoulders hit the door, and, slowly, the ledger creaked open again, and on the fresh page, I saw it, my name, over and over, written in that same black ink. And then, beneath it, new words: "Go to the morgue, write what is owed." "No," I whispered, my voice shaking. "No more." But the quill lifted, hovered in the air, and scrawled another line, sharper this time, letters cutting so deep into the paper I swore I smelled burning. "If you don't write, they will." The candles in my cell all went out. From the darkness, I heard it, a chorus of dead voices, faint but eager, whispering in unison. Pages turned by themselves, faster and faster, until the ledger snapped shut with a sound that echoed like a coffin lid. And then came the bells. I clutched the ledger to my chest, trembling, knowing I had no choice, because when I looked down at my hands, ink was already smeared across my fingers. I hadn't written a single word, but the ledger had been writing through me. Episode 8, The Choir Beneath the Floor. I didn't want to go back. God help me, I didn't, but the ledger dragged me there. The bells had been silent this time, but the pages in my hand wouldn't stop trembling. Every step toward the morgue felt like walking into a grave I'd already dug for myself. When I opened the door, the silence was absolute. No rattling coffins, no shifting bodies, only the steady, suffocating hum of air, heavy with something that felt expectant. Then I heard it. At first, it was soft like a breeze slipping through cracks in the stone, but it grew louder, clear, voices, dozens of them, hundreds, maybe, a choir, singing from somewhere deep beneath the morgue floor. It wasn't a hymn I knew, no melody I'd ever heard in any chapel. The sound was raw, aching, and beautiful in a way that hurt. I fell to my knees, and then, between the harmonies, I heard a single voice rise above the rest. "Agnes." My blood turned to ice. Who's there?" I whispered, clutching the ledger like it was a shield. The choir swelled, the floor vibrated beneath me. Coffins rattled in their drawers, not violently this time, but in rhythm with the song. "Agnes." They sang again, voices threading together into something too human to be holy. I backed toward the door, but the ledger snapped open in my hands. Ink bled across the page, forming words I didn't write. "Sing with them, and the ground will break." "No," I gasped, shaking my head. "I won't." The lights went out, and in that perfect darkness, their voices changed. They weren't singing anymore. They were pleading, "Agnes, free us." The stone beneath my feet cracked. A thin line split the floor, and from it, I felt a heat rising from fire, but from something older, something buried. The choir sang once more, louder than ever. I covered my ears, but their song wasn't in that air anymore. It was inside me, vibrating in my bones, pulling me down to the floor. I screamed. The crack widened, and for the briefest moment, I saw fingers, pale, countless fingers, clawing upward from the darkness below. I fled the morgue, but even in my cell, I could still hear theme faint now, almost tender. "Agnes, sing." Episode 9, The First Body That Stood. The morgue was too quiet. After the night of the choir, I prayed until my lips bled. I begged for the silence to last, but silence in this place is never mercy. It was only waiting. I carried the ledger with me, though I didn't want to. Its pages wouldn't stop bleeding ink, black veins crawling across the parchment like roots. And on the newest page, one sentence carved itself deep into the paper. "Watch who rises first." When I opened the morgue door, the air hit me like a wall still, cold and heavy with the weight of the dead. The drawers were still, the coffins quiet, and one of them moved. A low, deliberate click echoed through the room as a drawer slid open by itself. The corpse inside was a man I didn't recognize. His skin was pale and stretched thin, lips colorless, eyes shut tight. I should have run. I didn't. Instead, I whispered, "Please, say dead." His eyes snapped open, not slowly, not gently. They snapped wide, as if yanked from the other side. And then, with a sound like dry branches breaking, he stood. I frowned, breath locked in my chest, his head tilted toward me, bones creaking, his neck twisting to far, his feet dragged across the floor, bare and gray. but his movements were purposeful and nervingly slow. I choked out. The corpse jaw unhinged, and a sound poured out, not a voice, not a moan, Agnes. It wasn't one voice, it was hundreds, the choir. Every dead throat and that Morgue sang through him. I stumbled back, clutching the ledger, but the corpse kept coming. His hand lifted, bony fingers pointing straight at me. Then, his mouth stretched wider, flesh tearing at the corners, and through the gaping hole, I heard it. He is coming. The other drawers began to rattle, one by one, some violently, some gently. The morgue wasn't silent anymore. The dead were waking up. I turned and ran, slamming the door behind me, but even as I fled up the stairs, I could hear Itha's footsteps, slow and steady, tracking across the stone, and in my ledger, ink still bleeding across the page, new words formed. Do not lock the door. Let him in. Episode 10, The Procession of the Dead. The bells rang again that night, not from the chapel, not from the earth. They rang inside my skull. When I opened the morgue door, the air was already moving, cold currents swirling as if the room itself were breathing. And then I saw them. Every corpse drawer was open. They were standing, not one, not two, down scenes of them. Men, women, even the long-forgotten dead, dressed in burial shrouds muddled with age. They moved in perfect silence, their heads bowed, their steps slow and deliberate. A procession. I couldn't move. My fingers dug into the ledger until they ached. The dead formed a line, waiting between the stone tables, their bare feet leaving no sound against the floor. Their mouths opened, but no voices came. Instead, the morgue filled with a single, low, hum, deep, resonant, and inhuman. The ledger in my hand flipped open by itself. Ink spilled like blood across the page, words clawing their way into existence. Do not interrupt the ritual. My knees locked. I could only watch. They walked toward the far wall, one I had always believed to be solid stone. But as the dead drew near, it shifted, mortar cracked, bricks groaned, and a doorway yawned open where none had been before. Beyond it, only blackness. The first corpse crossed the threshold, then another, and another, each one disappearing into the dark, swallowed without a sound. I took one trembling step forward, unable to stop myself. Where are they going? My voice was barely a breath. From behind me, a voice like gravel and prayer answered, to prepare the way. I spun, but no one was there, only the dead, filing into the void. And then, as if sensing me, one of them paused. It turned its head slowly, impossibly, and looked at me. Its eyes were black pits, and when its lips moved, I heard a whisper that was not its own. You will walk with us soon, Sister Agnes. The wall sealed shut. The hum stopped. The morgue was still again. I collapsed to the floor, gasping, clutching the ledger against my chest. On the open page, new words burned themselves into the parchment. He is almost here. Episode 11, The Door That Shouldn't Exist. The wall should have been solid. I saw it sealed shut, but the ledger knew better. That night, its pages bled ink like an open wound. I didn't write a single word, but the cool danced on its own. Do not run. Watch the door. The bells rang at 3:03 a.m., not from the chapel, not even in my head. They rang from the floor beneath my feet. I didn't want to go. God forgive me. I went anyway. When I reached the morgue, I frowned. See, the stone wall at the far end was trembling, pulsing as though it had veins. Mortar cracked, bricks groaned, and once again, a door split open in the middle of the wall, bleeding darkness into the room. But this time, nothing went in. Something came out. The first thing I saw was a hand. Long, skeletal fingers gripped the frame, nails scraping stone until sparks flew. Then a face, if it could be called, that emerged. Hollow eyes, a mouth that stretched wide, lined not with teeth, but with whispering shadows that moved like smoke. The corpses in the morgue didn't move. They knelt. Every single one of them dropped to their knees, heads bowed toward the door. And then it stepped through. It was tall, impossibly tall, its form stitched together from the darkness itself. The air around it bent and groaned, like the room couldn't hold its weight. I wanted to pray, but my throat locked. It turned its head toward me. Agnes, it said, my name, in 100 voices at once. The ledger in my hand slammed open, its pages flipping violently until it landed on a single phrase, written in jagged ink. Do not speak, do not breathe. The thing moved closer. Every step it took extinguished another candle, until the room was swallowed in black. I felt its breath cold, sharp, like winter in a grave. It didn't touch me. It didn't have to. It leaned down, its hollow face inches from mine, and whispered, "He has chosen you." And then just as suddenly as it appeared, it turned, walked back into the door, and vanished. The wall sealed shut. The corpses stood, silent and still, as if nothing had happened, but the ledger was still open. New words carved themselves into the page. Next time, he will not leave alone. Episode 12, The Night of No Bells. The bells didn't ring, for the first time since this nightmare began. The night was silent. No hum in the walls, no trembling in the floor, only silence thick and wrong, pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't breathe through. I should have been relieved. Instead, I prayed, because silence in this place isn't mercy. It's the breath before the scream. The ledger lay on my desk, closed but trembling faintly, as if something inside it was pacing. When I dared to touch it, the cover burned cold beneath my fingers. Then, slowly, it opened by itself. One line, written in that same black, bleeding ink. If the bells do not call, it means he is already here. The air in my cell shifted cold, sharp, as if someone had opened a door that wasn't there. I turned toward the hallway. No sound, no movement, but I knew I wasn't alone. I should have stayed in my room. I didn't, drawn by a pull I couldn't resist. I went down the stairs to the morgue. Every step echoed like I was walking into my own funeral. When I reached the door, I saw it, the wall. That cursed wall was already open. No creaking bricks this time, no grinding stone, just a black, gaping wound in reality, breathing cold into the room. And from it, nothing came out. No footsteps, no corpses, only silence. I should have run. I stayed. Then, one by one, the corpses turned their heads toward me. Not in unison, slowly, like they were savoring it. Their mouths opened, but they didn't sing this time. They didn't speak. They listened. The silence grew heavier, pressing against my ears until I thought I'd go mad. I wanted to scream just to break it, but then I felt it. Breath on my neck. I spun, but there was nothing. Only the morgue, only the dead, and the door. The ledger slipped from my hands, pages flaring open, and the ink wrote without pause, letters sharp enough to gouge the paper. Do not move. He is behind you. I didn't turn. I couldn't, but I felt it. A shadow taller than any wall, a presence colder than the grave itself. And then, in that endless, suffocating silence, a voice, "Agnes, it's time to follow." The world went black. When I woke, I was in my cell. The ledger was closed, but under my door were footprints, there, wet, leading out. Episode 13, The Dead Will Pray. The first time I saw the dead kneel, I thought it was a hallucination, but I don't dream with my eyes open. The bells never rang that night. The silence returned heavier than before, pressing into my chest like a stone coffin lid. The ledger Saturday on my table, closed but pulsing faintly as if something inside it wanted out. When I opened it, the ink bled upward, scrawling words that made my blood turn to ice. Go to the morgue, witness their worship. I should have burned it. I should have run. Instead, I obeyed. The morgue was dim, lit only by a few trembling candles. And there, in that hollow, frowsing chamber, the dead had gathered. They were kneeling, every corpse in the room, their pale limbs bent at impossible angles, their heads pressed low to the ground. Even the ones who had been locked in drawers were now out, folded in grotesque reverence. And they were praying. I didn't hear words. It was worse than that. Their jaws moved soundlessly, their throats convulsed, and though no sound escaped, I felt their voices, a dreadful vibration in my bones, like the air itself was chanting through me. One corpse, a man with a shattered jaw, turned his head toward me. Even while kneeling, his lips twisted into something that might have been a smile. His mouth opened wider, flesh tearing at the corners, and from the darkness inside, a whisper crawled. "He hears you too, Sister Agnes." I stumbled back, clutching the ledger, but the dead did not rise. They didn't even look at me again. Instead, the floor beneath them began to crack. Thin fissures spread like veins, glowing faintly, no with light, but with a color that didn't belong to this world. The ledger flipped open in my hands. pages thrashing violently until they stopped on one line, written in jagged, furious ink. Do not pray with them, or you will not come back. The corpses pressed their faces deeper to the ground. I swear I heard laughter, not loud, not human, something ancient, muffled beneath the stone. And then, the silence broke. Agnes, 100 dead now said in unison, without sound, without breath. Kneel. I ran. God forgive me. I ran. But even back in my cell, I can still feel his weight. The morgue floor trembled with every silent prayer. And tonight, I think they're still kneeling, praying for me. Episode 14. The Hand from the Floor. The cracks in the morgue floor never closed. For 3 nights, I heard them spreading like dry bones snapping beneath the stone. The dead never moved from their kneeling positions. They stayed bent in prayer, their silent worship vibrating through the ear like the hum of a grave. Tonight, the ledger didn't tremble. It bled. Ink seeped through its pages, spilling onto my hands, tracing words I didn't want to read. Do not stand too close when it reaches through. When I entered the morgue, I felt it. Before I saw it, an ancient weight pressing down on the room, thick enough to choke. The corpses were still kneeling, their heads almost fused to the floor, their fingers clawing at the stone as if begging to be taken. And then the ground moved. The fissures widened, splitting open like a mouth. From the darkness below, something emerged. A hand, not flesh, not bone. Its skin was black, stretched to tight, glistening like oil. Fingers longer than my arm clawed their way out of the crack, nails scraping the floor until sparks danced across the stone. The corpses lifted their heads for the first time, and they smiled. The hand flexed, knuckles popping like distant thunder. It slammed down once, hard enough to rattle every table and drawer in the room. Dust fell from the ceiling like ash. I couldn't move. My legs were rooted in terror. And, slowly, the monstrous hand dragged its palm across the ground, tracing a circle in the stone, and every corpse began to bow. The ledger in my arm snapped open violently. One single sentence carved itself across the page, each letter deep enough to tear through. Do not let it grab you. The hand stopped moving, and then God help me turned. Not the wrist, not the arm. The hand itself rotated, fingers twisted in ways no joint should, until its palm was facing me. It beckoned. The corpses turned their hollow eyes toward me, mouths stretching open in silent laughter, and from the crack came a sound like chain snapping. Soon, Agnes. I ran. I didn't look back, but even as I slammed the morgue door behind me, I heard the stone splintering. The hand isn't going back. It's waiting. Episode 15. The One Who Crawls Out. The morgue floor never stopped shaking. By the 3rd night, the cracks had widened into a gaping wound in the earth. The corpses no longer knelt in prayer. They lay prostrate now, faces pressed to the stone, arms outstretched toward the abyss, worshipping something they no longer dared to look at. I should have fled. I should have sealed the door and prayed until my voice bled. Instead, I opened it. The ledger didn't warn me this time. It invited me. Its pages turned with frantic, joyful violence until one sentence etched itself across the parchment, carved so deep it tore through the paper. Witness is coming. The air in the morgue was thick, heavy as wet soil, reeking of rotten cold iron. From the pit in the floor, the hand had returned Ned, but now there were 2, both enormous, veined with black light, claws dragging against stone, splintering it apart. And then it began to rise. First came the arms long, impossibly long, as if they reached down through centuries of graves. Then the shoulders, sharp as broken altar stones. And finally, its head. If it had a face once, it was gone now. Instead, there was only a maw, a gaping wound that screamed without sound, ringed with teeth that were not teeth but writhing shadows. The dead moved. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They crawled toward it, their joints cracking like snapping branches, their empty sockets leaking black tears. And one by one, they vanished into its mouth. I stood frowning, the ledger clutched so tight my knuckles split and bled. Then the ink wrote again, for the last time. If you do not bow, he will see you. But I didn't bow. I couldn't. My legs refused. The thing turned toward me. The mouth widened, splitting its skull in half, and 100 voices poured out low, guttural, and mocking. Agnes, yours was the loudest prayer of all. The candles in the morgue died at once. Darkness swallowed everything but that pit and the thing crawling from it. And then it reached for me. The ground split open. Cold, hands-down seams. Hundreds shot up from the cracks, clawing at my ankles, my wrists, dragging me toward the black. I screamed, "God forgive me!" I screamed his name, and for the first time, he answered, not with salvation, with laughter. The last thing I saw was the morgue ceiling, vanishing as if I were being pulled underwater, and that endless, grinning maw closing above me, then silence.
Epilogue: The bells that shouldn't ring. They say the morgue has been sealed, locked behind rusted chains, blessed by priests who no longer dare to pray aloud. But at night, the bells ring. No one knows why. There are no ropes left to pull them, no hands left to move them. And yet, every night at exactly 3:33 a.m., the sound echoes through the convent halls, low, mournful, and hollow, like a funeral procession for something still crawling. Sister Agnes was never found. Some say she was dragged into the cracks beneath the morgue floor, that she kneels with the dead now, her lips moving in a prayer no living ear should hear. Others whisper that she stands behind the morgue door, waiting for anyone brave or foolish enough to open it. And then there are the voices. The nuns say if you pass the morgue at night and listen closely, you can hear her, not screaming, not begging, praying in perfect unison with 100 silent corpses. The ledger she once carried appeared on the altar last week. No one touched it. No one dared. The ink was fresh, the words carved deep into the page. When the bells stop, he will walk the halls. And last night, the bells were louder than ever.